And good evening, everyone. We're getting a clearer look at the price tag of those back-to-back winter storms that hit western New York last month. The cost just for the city of Buffalo now exceeds $6 million. It is a lot of money, and that's on top of what our other municipalities had to spend. But will the federal government help pick up the tab? Critics say there is really a disparity in how the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, treats snow and other severe winter weather events compared to things like hurricanes, tornadoes, or floods. A couple of months back, I talked one-on-one with the administrator of FEMA, and I asked her if Congress needs to change the law here.
And the funding to support jurisdictions that are experiencing blizzards or major snowstorms, it's already eligible expenses within our Stafford Act, but we are a reimbursement agency, and so one of the criteria is that we reimburse for costs that exceed the state and local capacity, and so that's what we work with, right?
But part of the criteria is also just how much snow falls. There is an incredibly high burden to automatically qualify, whereas with most other types of storms, the dollar figure of the damage is really what matters most. Joining me live here tonight is Buffalo Common Council President Chris Scanlon. He put forward a resolution that passed unanimously today, calling on FEMA to change these rules. Thanks for coming in to talk about this. We appreciate it. So let me ask you, first of all, we know that Senator Schumer and others have also been sort of lobbying to change how FEMA determines when places qualify. Is this resolution part of that effort of sort of a pressure campaign on FEMA?
Yes, absolutely. You know, you have elected officials from the mayor here to Senator Schumer, all across that wide range pushing for this, and this is just our legislative bodies showing support. You know, in the last 14 months, we've had 3 really debilitating snow events. And when you hear about natural disasters across the country, whether it be hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, earthquakes, things like you mentioned in the opening, you immediately think of FEMA and them coming in to provide federal aid. And I think we should get to a point where we hear these snow events or blizzards and how drastically they're impacting our community, that it should be the same kind of reaction. Immediately thinking, all right, FEMA will come in to assist, because it's not realistic for one municipality to shoulder this kind of financial burden.
And there was one of the storms in which the region actually didn't qualify, and President Biden actually overrode that. But the argument here is that it shouldn't take something like that, right? The rules should just be sort of fair from the beginning in terms of if you're treating a flood or a hurricane differently from a blizzard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful that the president took that step with that particular storm, but what we want to see is that threshold lower to where these storms are qualifying more frequently. Again, I know the governor can step in at times too to declare different emergency scenarios, but we want to make sure that at first glance, you know, these storms are qualifying. You know, you can prepare for them. We should expect them. But whether you're preparing for them financially or operationally, when they get to the scale, the magnitude of some of the storms that we've seen over the course of the past couple of years, it's really unrealistic for us to shoulder that.
Yeah, it's the frequency of it, right? I mean, I think back to the huge, like 7-foot snowstorm we had in 2014, and it wasn't then again until 2020 or 2022 that we had another big storm like that. But that was one of 3 just since then. And so I guess it's sort of changing everyone's mindset, from you as a city lawmaker to all the people leading all of our municipalities, because it just seems like this is a new normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you talked about at the top, this last round of snow cost the city somewhere around $6 million. And you know, that's with us doing things the right way. We're going out, we're getting that snow out of the way immediately, and want to make sure that the community is safe for our residents. But if you look over the past 14 months or so, now you're talking about tens of millions of dollars from a few snow events. So it's just not something that we can handle financially.
And your district in South Buffalo was ground zero of this last one, right? I mean, here downtown, we got hit hard, but nothing like we saw in South Buffalo. It was interesting to hear Mayor Brown talk about people's expectations too. They have changed a little bit compared to maybe what some folks watching us now remember from decades ago. People want these residential streets cleared, and so you're spending more money with these private contractors to do that work. I know the city's financial situation isn't great at the moment, so how do you factor that in long-term, looking at the financial realities?
I think that's got to be part of the argument on our behalf when reaching out to the federal government. You know, as I said, we can plan for this financially, but when these storms get to a certain scale, a certain magnitude, we can't handle it. And like you said, we are now setting a precedent where this is how the residents of the city of Buffalo want us to respond to these storms. And we want this snow plowed, and if it can't be plowed, if it's too much, we want it hauled out as quickly as possible, because that's what we have to do to make it safe for everyone. We have to be able to come and go, whether it's emergencies and ultimately getting people back to work, getting the economy up and running, businesses open, things of that nature. So we've got to get the snow out of here as quickly as possible, and it takes every bit of assistance we can get, and that includes the federal government.
Finally, and I'm almost out of time, but the control board has recommended the city put what is essentially a freeze on hiring. I mean, it sort of speaks to the dire nature of things. How big a hit is $6 million from these past two storms on the city's books?
I think it's a big hit regardless of the scenario, and that's why we're looking for that additional assistance, whether it's this scenario now financially or some other time. I mean, that's $6 million that we could otherwise do other things with. We can go out and do things, creative things, fun things within the community, in addition to just providing the services we typically provide. But if that's $6 million, $7 million, or as I said, over the course of 3 storms, tens of millions of dollars are out the window. That's money that we'll never get back to be able to do things with.
Councilman Chris Scanlon represents the South District and is the new president of the Buffalo Common Council. Thanks for talking us through this.
Thank you for having me.